My brothers grabbed millions at Grandpa Joe's funeral while I stood there holding a wrinkled envelope with just one airplane ticket. Everyone made fun of me that day. For months later, they were crying and asking me to help them. My name is Alex Carter, and I'm going to tell you how the saddest day of my life turned into the best thing that ever happened to me. But first, let me tell you about the people in this crazy story my grandpa planned from heaven. There was Marcus, my big brother, wearing his fancy $3,000 suit and already planning his victory speech for all the workers. Sophia, his twin sister, was trying to hide her huge smile behind her expensive sunglasses, probably thinking about which boat she'd buy first. Their mom and dad, Uncle Rick and Aunt Linda, stood there like hungry birds who finally found food. My uncle's hands were already reaching for the papers the lawyer was holding. And then there was me, the guy who fixes computers for a living and drove 4 hours in an old Toyota that makes weird noises just to say goodbye to the only person in our family who really cared about me. Grandpa Joe built his business from zero. He started with one small computer repair shop and turned it into TechWorld Industries, and everyone wanted a piece of his success. Everyone except me. I just wanted one more day to build model airplanes with the old man who taught me that the smartest plans are the ones nobody expects. That funeral wasn't just about saying goodbye to Joe Carter. It was the day I learned that sometimes the smallest gift holds the biggest surprise, and sometimes the people laughing at you are about to lose everything they think they own. My alarm clock buzzed at 6 o'clock every morning, just like it had for the past 5 years since I started my computer repair business in Phoenix. The crack in my studio apartment wall looked like a lightning bolt if you stared at it long enough. My neighbor's cat was already meowing right on time, and I could hear Mr. Rodriguez playing his guitar through the thin walls. This was my life. Simple, quiet, and totally different from the world I grew up in. Being a Carter meant something special in our town. It meant country clubs and private schools, fancy cars, and big bank accounts. But for me, it meant choosing between buying groceries and fixing my laptop because I had walked away from all that money to start my own little business fixing computers for regular people who couldn't afford the big stores. My dad, Michael, understood why I did that. He was the only one who got it. Dad died when I was 16, got sick really fast while working late at his desk for Uncle Rick's part of Grandpa's company. He spent his whole life being the good guy, the one who worked hard and never complained when Uncle Rick took credit for his ideas. The last thing Dad ever told me was, "Alex, don't let them change you into someone you're not. Your grandpa did that to me, and look what happened." 3 hours later, he was gone. My mom, Sarah, picked up all the broken pieces after that. She worked as a secretary at the local school, working extra hours to keep us going after we found out Dad had given away most of his company money to help Uncle Rick fix his mistakes. That was Dad, always cleaning up other people's problems, always thinking family meant giving up everything for them. Mom never said mean things about it, but I saw the way she looked at Uncle Rick at Dad's funeral, and I knew that sometimes being really angry doesn't need words. Grandpa Joe was like a puzzle wrapped in a business suit. He built TechWorld from one tiny shop he bought with money he saved from the army after he came home from fighting. By the time I was born, he owned computer stores in 15 cities and had enough money to buy anything he wanted. But here's the thing about Grandpa Joe. He didn't believe in just giving people stuff. He believed people should work for what they got. Every birthday card had a $20 bill and a note that said, "Make this grow into more." Every Christmas present was something useful, like books about business or gift cards for online classes about computers. The only time Grandpa Joe seemed really interested in me was during our Saturday airplane building sessions. It started when I was 9, right after I won first place at my school's science fair for building a remote control plane. He showed up at our house one Saturday morning with a big box of airplane parts and said, "Show me what you can build." My first plane crashed in 10 seconds, but he came back the next Saturday and the next, and those building days became the best part of our time together. "You build like your father," he told me once, too worried about making it perfect, not focused enough on making it fly. "Maybe I don't want to rush and break everything just to win," I said back. He actually smiled at that, the first real smile I'd ever seen from him. Maybe that's why you're the only one I still enjoy talking to, Alex. Marcus and Sophia never understood those airplane building days. Marcus was too busy following Grandpa around the office, learning about making money and avoiding taxes. He'd gotten his business degree from a fancy college, Grandpa's old school, and never let anyone forget it. Every family dinner turned into Marcus giving a speech about business plans and buying other companies. He talked like those business shows on TV, turning every conversation into a sales pitch. Sophia took a different approach. She turned herself into a famous person online, showing off her life as the computer princess on social media. 300,000 people followed her as she posed with different gadgets in different expensive clothes at different tech conventions. She called it building her brand, but really she was just spending Grandpa's money while waiting for more. Her biggest success was getting a blue check mark on Instagram and dating a guy from California who owned a software company. Uncle Rick and Aunt Linda were the perfect power couple in the most fake way possible. Uncle Rick had worked his way up to being in charge of money at TechWorld, though most of the real work was done by his assistant. Aunt Linda spent her time at fancy charity parties, not because she cared about helping people, but because she liked seeing her picture in the newspaper. They lived in a house so big they needed an intercom system to talk to each other from different rooms. And then there was me, fixing broken computers for 42 customers a week, eating dinner at a kitchen table I bought at a yard sale, and feeling happier than any of them could imagine. That was my life before the funeral, before the envelope, before everything changed. I thought I knew who I was and where I belonged. Turns out I was looking at the wrong game the whole time. The Riverside Community Center had never felt more uncomfortable than it did that November afternoon. Grandpa Joe had asked for his will to be read here in the same meeting room where he'd made his biggest business deals over coffee and handshakes. The long table reflected our faces like a dark mirror, and I could see Marcus checking his expensive watch for the 4th time in 10 minutes. We'd just come from the cemetery where the winter wind had made the burial cold and miserable, which Aunt Linda complained about the entire car ride. Before we start, Mr. Peterson, the family lawyer, put on his reading glasses and cleared his throat. I want everyone to know that Joe was very clear about these arrangements. He looked at this will just 1 week before he passed away. Uncle Rick leaned forward, his hands already making fists because he was so excited. We understand, Peterson. Joe talked to me about the succession plan many times. That was a lie, and everyone knew it. Grandpa never talked business outside the office, and he definitely never promised anything to anyone. But Uncle Rick had been telling everyone who would listen that he was becoming the new CEO, that Marcus would be his helper, and that the family business was safe. Let's continue then. Mr. Peterson opened the thick folder. To my son, Rick Carter, and his wife, Linda, I leave the lake house in Colorado and the investment account ending in numbers 892. Aunt Linda grabbed Uncle Rick's arm, her diamond ring catching the light. The lake house. Oh, Rick. He did remember how much we loved our summers there. To my grandson, Marcus Carter, Mr. Peterson continued, I leave TechWorld Industries and all its business assets, with the rule that he must keep all current employees for at least 1 year. Marcus jumped up so fast his chair made a loud scraping sound on the floor. I knew it. Grandpa, I won't let you down. He was already pulling out his phone, probably to change his social media profile to CEO. To my granddaughter, Sophia Carter, I leave the downtown apartment and the vacation home in Miami, currently being rented out for income. Sophia let out a scream that could have broken glass. The downtown apartment? Oh my God. Do you know how much that's worth? And Miami? My followers are going to go crazy. Mr. Peterson turned to me, and I saw something in his eyes that looked like he felt sorry for me. And to my grandson, Alex Carter, I leave this. He pulled out a small white envelope, bent at the edges, with my name written on it in Grandpa's shaky handwriting. The room went completely silent for exactly 3 seconds before Marcus started laughing. Are you kidding me? Marcus's voice cracked because he was laughing so hard. That's it? An envelope. I took it with steady hands, even though my heart was beating super fast. The paper felt thin and unimportant. Inside was just one airplane ticket. Tokyo, one way, leaving in 2 days. Let me see that. Marcus grabbed the ticket from my hand before I could stop him. A cheap seat ticket? Oh, this is hilarious. The computer guy gets a vacation. Sophia was already recording on her phone. This is actually so funny. Alex, your face right now. Don't worry. Maybe he left you some airline points too. Uncle Rick stood up, fixing his tie like someone who just won everything. Joe always said you didn't have what it takes for business, Alex. At least he gave you something nice. Tokyo is beautiful this time of year. It's probably his way of saying goodbye, Aunt Linda added, her voice sounding fake sweet. A little trip to help you feel better about everything. How nice. My mom, who had been quiet in the corner, finally spoke up. Is that everything, Mr. Peterson? That finishes all the property and money distribution, Mr. Peterson replied, closing the folder. There is a personal letter for Alex to be opened only when he arrives in Tokyo. A letter? Marcus was practically crying from laughing so hard. What's it going to say? Sorry you're broke. Enjoy the sushi? Marcus, that's enough. Uncle Rick said, though he was smiling too. Alex chose his path. He wanted to fix computers, and Joe respected that enough to give him a goodbye gift. We should all be thankful for what we received. I looked at the ticket again. November 18th, 2:15 p.m., flight number 447. Why so specific? Why Tokyo? Grandpa had never mentioned Japan in all our years of building airplanes together. He talked about New York, Chicago, Atlanta, but never Tokyo. Well, I stood up, sliding the ticket back into the envelope. I guess I better start packing. You're really going? Sophia looked actually surprised. You're going to use your vacation days to take a random trip to Japan? Your grandpa gave me a ticket, I said, looking each of them in the eyes. The least I can do is use it. Uncle Rick shook his head. Sentimental fool, just like your father. Michael never understood that feelings have no place in business either. That's when I knew I was definitely getting on that plane because Uncle Rick was wrong about my father, wrong about me, and maybe, just maybe, wrong about what Grandpa had really left me. The ticket felt like nothing in my pocket, but somehow it seemed heavier than all the millions they'd just gotten. As I walked out of that community center, their laughter following me to the parking lot, I remembered Grandpa's last words to me during our final airplane building session. The best moves, Alex, are the ones nobody sees coming. The wind had died down, and for the first time that day, the sun came out from behind the clouds. That night, I sat at my kitchen table staring at the airplane ticket while my computer showed my bank account balance, $2,347.89. My rent was due in 6 days. My car needed new tires. I had 20 computers to fix by Friday. Every smart part of my brain said that flying to Tokyo was crazy. But I couldn't stop thinking about Grandpa's face during our last airplane building day, just 3 weeks before he died. He'd been different that day, gentler somehow, like he'd finally stopped pretending to be someone he wasn't. Alex, he'd said, gluing wings onto our latest model. What do you know about faith? It's something you have to earn, I'd answered, using the same response he'd taught all of us since we were kids.
No, boy.
Real faith is knowing when to follow without knowing why. Your father knew that. He trusted me with something once, something important, and I let him down. But you, Alex, you're different. You don't want anything from me. I never have, Grandpa. I know. That's why when the time comes, you'll trust me, even when everyone else thinks you're crazy. Now, holding that ticket, his words felt less like a memory and more like instructions. I picked up my phone and called my mother. I'm going, I said as soon as she answered. I knew you would, Sarah replied without waiting. Your grandpa called me last month. He didn't say much, just that I should support whatever choice you made after the funeral. Mom, this is insane. I can't afford to miss work. I have people counting on me. Alex, your father once told me that Joe wasn't always the man we knew. He said there was a before and after in his dad's life, and we only knew the after. Maybe this is about the before. I spent the next morning arranging for my friend Dave to handle my computer repair customers. My biggest client, Mrs. Johnson, wasn't happy about the sudden change, but I'd never missed a day in 5 years, so she reluctantly agreed to wait 3 days. 3 days to fly to Tokyo and figure out what game my grandpa was playing. Mr. Carter, you okay? Asked Tommy, one of my regular customers, after I finished fixing his laptop. You seem different today, Just thinking about history, Tommy, how sometimes the most important moments look like nothing when they're happening. I packed light, one backpack with 3 changes of clothes and my dad's old notebook that I'd carried since his funeral. The taxi to Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport cost me $45. I couldn't really spend, but I was already committed to this craziness. At the gate, waiting to board, I pulled out the envelope again. That's when I noticed something I'd missed before. In the corner, barely visible, was a tiny number written in pencil, 1962. The year grandfather would have been 25, 3 years after he'd left the army. The flight attendant called my boarding group, and I got in line behind a businessman typing on his laptop. Normal people with normal problems, not wondering why their dead grandfather had sent them on a mysterious trip across the Pacific Ocean. I found my seat, 28C, middle seat near the back of the plane. Of course, Marcus had been right about it being a cheap seat. The guy to my left was already sleeping and breathing loudly. The woman to my right had taken both armrests and was watching a movie on her tablet with the volume too loud. As the plane took off, Phoenix getting smaller below us, I thought about Marcus, probably already sitting in Grandpa's office chair, feeling like a king. Sophia was definitely posting photos from the Miami house by now. Uncle Rick and Aunt Linda were probably meeting with money advisors about their new wealth. And here I was, squished in a cheap seat, flying toward a mystery with money I didn't have to waste. But something felt right about it. For the first time since Grandpa died, I felt like I was exactly where I needed to be. The flight attendant came by with drinks. "Sir, would you like something to drink?" "Just water, please." She handed me a bottle, and as I opened it, I remembered another airplane building lesson. Grandpa had broken his favorite model plane on purpose to teach me something. I'd been shocked, unable to understand why he'd destroy something so beautiful. "Success isn't about what you keep, Alex," he'd explained. "It's about what you're willing to break to build something better. Most people can't see past the breaking part. That's why they never really succeed." The plane turned west, heading into the night toward Tokyo and whatever Grandpa had hidden there. My family thought they'd won everything that mattered. But as I settled in for the 12-hour flight, I had a feeling that Grandpa's real plan was just beginning, and I was the only one he'd chosen to see it through. The captain announced our flying height, and I closed my eyes, my dad's notebook pressed against my chest, trusting a dead man's plan even though I couldn't see the whole picture. The plane touched down at Tokyo's Narita Airport at exactly 4:22 p.m. local time. My legs hurt, my back was sore, and I'd barely slept during the 12-hour flight. The Japanese announcements mixed with English as we rolled to the gate, and suddenly the reality hit me. I was in Tokyo with no hotel reservation, no plan, and no idea what I was supposed to do next. Immigration was a blur of stamps and questions. "Purpose of visit?" the officer asked in perfect English. "I honestly have no idea," I replied, too tired to make something up. He looked at me strangely but stamped my passport anyway. "Welcome to Japan." I followed the crowd toward baggage claim, even though I only had my backpack. The arrivals area was chaos, families hugging, drivers holding signs for business people, tourists looking confused. I was about to head for the exit when I saw it, a professionally printed sign reading, "Alex Carter," held by a woman in a neat blue uniform. My heart stopped. I walked over carefully. "I'm Alex Carter." The driver's face brightened with relief. "Mr. Carter, finally. Please come quickly." Her English was clear with a slight accent. "Who sent you? Your grandfather arranged everything months ago. My name is Yuki. Please, we have a long drive." She took my bag before I could argue and led me outside to a clean white van that looked like it cost more than I made in a year. The November air was cool, nothing like Phoenix's desert heat. Yuki opened the door for me, and I climbed into seats that felt like sitting on a cloud. "Where are we going?" I asked as she drove away from the airport. "Sakura Gardens, 2 hours north in the mountains. Your grandfather owned the property for 35 years. He visited every October for 1 week, always alone. 35 years. That would mean since 1990, when I was -3 years old. The math was impossible. Nothing made sense. We left Tokyo's busy streets behind, driving into mountains covered with pine trees and small farms. The landscape was so beautiful it hurt to look at, like something from a movie about finding peace in Japan. Yuki drove smoothly, taking mountain curves at speeds that made me hold onto my seat. "How did you know my grandfather?" I asked. "My father worked for Mr. Joe first. When Papa retired, I took over. 15 years now. I drive Mr. Joe when he comes every October." 15 years of October visits that none of us knew about. What else had Grandpa hidden? The road became smaller, winding through a tiny village where old women in traditional clothes watched us pass. Then Yuki turned onto a private road lined with cherry trees. At the end, wooden gates opened by themselves, showing a house that made me forget how to breathe. 2 stories of natural wood and stone, porches overlooking endless gardens, cherry trees that looked like they belonged in a painting. Yuki parked in front of doors that had to be hundreds of years old. Before I could understand what I was seeing, the doors opened and an elderly man came out. He was dignified in a way that had nothing to do with money and everything to do with wisdom, his gray hair cut short, his eyes the same bright blue as grandfather's. He walked toward me slowly, tears running down his face, and I knew before Yuki said the words that changed everything. "Alex," Yuki said softly, "meet your grandfather, Hiroshi Carter." The world spun. I actually grabbed the van to keep from falling. "That's impossible. My grandfather just died. We buried him last week." Hiroshi reached me then, his hands taking mine, his grip surprisingly gentle. "Your American grandfather did pass away, Joe-san, but I am very much alive." His accent was musical, his English careful but clear. He studied my face like he was trying to remember every detail. "You have his eyes," he whispered, "but your father's kind heart. Come inside, Alex. There is much to explain." The house's interior was simple beauty, nothing like the fancy mansion Uncle Rick and Aunt Linda owned. Hiroshi led me to a sitting room where the walls were covered with photographs. I saw my grandfather, young and smiling, standing in front of a small temple, a wedding photo. Grandfather and Hiroshi, both in their 20s, looking incredibly happy. "We became family in 1962, Hiroshi said, watching me try to understand everything. "Joe came to Japan with the army, stayed after his service to help build schools. We met at a community meeting in Tokyo. He was so determined, so full of hope. We started with nothing, just a few acres of gardens his friend gave us for almost free. He poured 2 cups of tea from a beautiful ceramic pot. 'This is from our garden's Sakura blend. We call it inheritance.' The tea was amazing, warm and complex. I don't understand. Grandfather had a whole life here. More than a life, Alex Cohen. He had a family, me, our adopted son Kenji, the grandchildren he never met because he chose America instead. He left you. The Vietnam War started. Joe felt duty calling. He was supposed to return in 6 months. His voice carried no anger, just sadness. But he met your American grandmother while on leave. She was expecting Vernon. An honorable man would have ended our partnership, but Joe couldn't bear to abandon either life. So he kept both separate, secret. My hands were shaking. He lived a complete lie. No, Alex Cohen. He lived 2 truths. He loved us both in different ways. The gardens grew, became successful. He sent money, visited every year, but he couldn't choose until now. He walked to a wooden cabinet and pulled out a thick folder. Sakura Gardens International. $52 million in assets. It's all yours, Alex. He was very specific. Not Rick, not Marcus, you. The documents Hiroshi handed me were overwhelming. Deeds, contracts, bank statements, all proving that my grandfather had built an entirely separate empire on this side of the Pacific. But what hit me hardest was the video he played on a tablet, recorded just 2 months before grandfather died. His face filled the screen, and for the first time ever, he looked truly peaceful. Alex, if you're watching this, then you trusted me enough to take the flight. Good. You always were the only one who understood that some things matter more than money. Your family got what they always wanted from me, the appearance of success. But appearances can fool you. Tech World has been losing money for 2 years. I've hidden it in the books, but Marcus is about to inherit a disaster. The apartment has 2 mortgages. The Miami house is rented, not owned. The lake house, the bank owns 80% of it. I gave them exactly what they showed me they valued, empty prizes that look shiny from the outside. He leaned closer to the camera. But you, Alex, you visited me every Saturday just to build airplanes. Never asked for anything. Never tried to get ahead. You chose fixing computers over money because you wanted meaning. So I'm giving you what you never asked for: truth, family, and yes, wealth that's actually real. The gardens produce tea for 500 stores worldwide. This house has been in Hiroshi's family for 200 years. Your uncle Kenji has been running everything, waiting to meet you. Your cousins Yuki and Taro are good people, raised right. Nothing like Marcus and Sophia. This is your real inheritance, a family that values work, land that creates something beautiful, and a legacy built on truth, not lies. He paused, that familiar sharp look returning to his eyes. Oh, and Alex, your next move is yours to make, but here's my suggestion. Marcus is going to call within 6 weeks, asking for help. Be kinder to him than he was to you. That's what makes you better. Game over, my boy. The screen went dark. Hiroshi squeezed my shoulder gently. He talked about you constantly, he said. Every visit, stories about his grandson, the computer fixer who chose purpose over profit. I spent 2 weeks in Japan learning everything. Uncle Kenji looked so much like my father it made my chest hurt. He ran the garden operations with quiet skill, never bitter about being the hidden son. Yuki and Taro, my Japanese cousins, welcomed me like a brother coming home from war. They taught me about tea, about the gardens, about the grandfather they knew versus the one I knew. He was different here, Taro told me one evening as we walked through the cherry trees. Peaceful. He'd work in the gardens, hands in the soil, laughing. Not the businessman you knew. The call for Marcus came exactly 38 days later. I was back in Phoenix fixing computers when my phone rang at 11 p.m. Alex, it's Marcus. We need to talk. His voice had lost all its cockiness. The company's broke. The accountants found everything. Dad lost the lake house. Sophia's apartment got taken by the bank yesterday. It's all gone. I'm sorry, Marcus. No, you're not, and you shouldn't be. We were terrible to you. He paused, and I heard him struggling. Grandpa left you something real, didn't he? Yes. Good. You deserve it. You were the only one who actually loved him instead of his money. I made Marcus an offer the next day, manage the U.S. sales for Sakura Tea products. Salary, not ownership. He said yes immediately. Sophia took longer to swallow her pride, but eventually she came around too. She's actually good at marketing when she's selling something real instead of just herself. She's dating Taro now, living in Tokyo, learning the business from the ground up. Uncle Rick and Aunt Linda moved to a small apartment in Phoenix. Uncle Rick found work as an accountant. Aunt Linda got a job at Target. They don't talk to me, but Marcus says they're actually happier, forced to depend on each other instead of money. My mother moved into the guest cottage on the Oregon property I bought with my first tea profits. She retired from office work and spends her days painting watercolors, something she'd always wanted to do, but never had time for. And me? I still fix computers, but only part-time now. Summer's the first spend in Japan learning the tea business, getting to know the family I never knew existed. My customers think it's cool that their computer guy owns a tea garden. I use it to teach the neighborhood kids about international business, farming, and family companies. Last week, I was at the house building a model airplane with Uncle Kenji when he said something that stopped me cold. You know, your grandfather always said the winner isn't who takes the most pieces, but who knows which pieces really matter. I looked at the airplane, then at the gardens through the window, then at the photo of grandfather on the wall, young and hopeful in 1962. He won, I said. It just took 60 years for the game to end. Kenji smiled. No, Alex Cohen, you won. You just didn't know you were playing. That crumpled envelope they all laughed at wasn't just a plane ticket. It was an invitation to discover who I really was, where I really came from, and what really mattered. My grandfather gave my family what they thought they wanted, and gave me what I didn't know I needed. The last package of tea grandfather personally grew sits in my apartment in Phoenix, unopened. The label says Sakura 2025 and underneath in his handwriting, for Alex, who understood that the best inheritance isn't what you're given, but what you're trusted to continue. Every Saturday, I still build model airplanes. Sometimes with Kenji in Japan, sometimes with the neighborhood kids in Phoenix, sometimes alone, thinking about the old man who planned the longest game I've ever seen. He taught me that real wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in truth, family, and the courage to trust when nothing makes sense. Turns out the game everyone else was watching, that was just the distraction. The real game was happening on a completely different board, in a different country, in a different language. And grandfather made sure I was the only one who got an invitation to play. If you enjoyed this story from Boss of Stories, please give it a like and share it with someone who needs to remember that sometimes the smallest gifts carry the biggest surprises. Drop a comment below about a time when something seemingly unimportant changed your life. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories about families, secrets, and the unexpected ways life shows us who we really are.